Well, hello everybody. Welcome back to Aquarius Rising Africa with me, Chantelle, definitely a hostess with the mostess. I absolutely claim that title because when we're looking at some of our guests that we are chatting to nowadays, that would most definitely ring true. So tonight I have with me again the amazing Penny Bradley, who was interviewed maybe 2 weeks ago now on Era. Great interview. Penny, a survivor of Montauk, secret space program, um, pilot of the Nachtwaffen mothership spaceship. Um, so wow,
Whoa,
what an interesting.
you said that so much better than most hosts do. Congrats.
Well, we are Afrikaans, and Afrikaans is quite similar to German. So
Yeah.
we do tend to get the guttural German sounds quite a lot better, I think, than the Americans or the Brits or something like that. I imagine they say it quite funny. But anyway, so yeah, it's wonderful to have you, Penny. And we chatted with you about 2 weeks ago now.
Yeah.
And we really, and as I said in that interview, I mean, this is a series of interviews we're doing, but we
Yes.
really just scratched the tip of the iceberg with what your story is about and some of the experiences you've had in the, as a survivor of the secret space programs, MK Ultra, so much more. Tonight, we're going to focus more on Montauk and Langley. So I'm going to ask you, just over to you. Maybe you can just start with explaining Langley. What is Langley? Where is Langley? What happens at Langley? And then Montauk, we've obviously in recent months as well spoken to quite a few Montauk survivors as well. Um,
Which
Wow,
ones?
wild. Speak to Christian Latara, speak to Holly Baglio, of course, Arkim, you know Arkim.
Yes,
Um,
I know
Je
I came.
Jessie Zabota has actually recently done she does the deep dives into
Hmm.
the Montauk and the symbolism and who's involved and stuff like that. So yeah, we've been definitely looking um, deeper into Montauk. And I see as well, just generally around on our little alternative media network circuit here, there's quite a few Montauk survivors that are chatting as well. So I'd love to
Um, I
hear
I
from
did
you.
a I did a pair of roundtables with Montauk survivors. So both of those interviews are available on my Odyssey channel. Um, the first one I had to censor one speaker because his mother was on the video, and she sat there, and she was a former CIA archivist, and she went through and verified that everybody in it was at Montauk, and he thought he was just the producer. And she sat there and said, and I have a file on you too. And he just sort of went into shock. That is the worst possible way to tell someone that they were at Montauk. This is his mother.
Okay, sorry, I had myself on mute. I was going to say by his mother.
This is the
My
worst
God.
possible way to tell someone they were at Montauk. Okay. Now, um, there are several hundred survivors of Montauk, and some of them are telling cover memories, and some of them are telling the straight truth. And the public needs to understand that we were all given cover memories so that we could live with ourselves, because they used us for some pretty horrific things. And they did some really nasty stuff to us. And so
Right.
when they first start coming forward with these memories, the first memories are cover memories. Now, what I have learned to do is anytime I get a new memory, I go into self-hypnosis, which that's an easy thing that people can learn themselves. There's YouTube videos that teach you how. But you go into self-hypnosis and you're still in charge. You're still in control. But you ask your subconscious, pull back the curtains and show me what really happened. Don't delete what's in front of the curtain because that's got value of its own, but just show me what really happened. And you get a very different story, and it's usually pretty horrific. If you have good memories from any of these programs, you're doing cover memories. That's the first thing I will say. Everything real in the SSP is, it's either boring as hell, rinse and repeat, same boring work every day, or it's really horrific. There are no in-betweens, and there isn't anything pleasant. And people who think this is glamorous, I've got a rude awakening for you. Okay. I had regression hypnosis last July. The main outcome of it was, okay, 2 years in a row, I had QHHT hypnosis with the same provider, Drago Reed, out of Tampa Bay, Florida. And it took 2 sessions to get it through to me what had really happened. Okay. Now, this is stuff my subconscious knew because my parents talked about it in front of me as a child. And the memory is stored there. This is not me going back in time and hearing it happen. Okay, this is my parents talked about it. My father had been part of the Teamsters Union. Africa knows nothing about it. There was a man named Jimmy Hoffa who was in charge of the Teamsters Union for a long time. And he was eventually killed by the mob. Okay, he had deep mafia connections, and the mafia was getting into the pension funds of the union. And Jimmy had been in jail for a short term, and he was coming back, and he was trying to stop this, and that's why he was killed. But in 1954, my father had joined them, and this was the year my parents got married, and he had gotten himself in some sort of trouble doing union work. And that was the phrase that came up in the hypnosis session. And this is me piecing the story together. He was approached by people from the Office of Scientific Studies, the OSS that was not disbanded. And they told him that if he let them have the child that my mom was then pregnant with, me, that they would take me and bring me back, and he would never notice I was gone, but that his prison term that was pending would go away. Well, he was 19. And remembering what I was like at 19, he was probably pretty naive. And he thought that I would just I would just go and come back and I would be okay, that they would be testing me or something. No, I was gone for 60 years and brought back to within 30 minutes of when I was taken. So I had lived an entire lifetime in that 30 minutes and come back. So I was a very different person. The first time that I know I was taken was the summer of 1959. And I was 4 years old. This was before my birthday. The Northern Hemisphere has different cycles. So this was July, August, maybe September of 1959, the middle of your winter. So it's summer for us, and my first school would have started in September. So, yeah, I have to keep your calendar straight in here while I'm talking. Now, these two guys in green fatigues, no names, no identifiers. These two guys in green fatigues, military uniforms, showed up in a green Korean War vet type of Jeep. And they came in, and as far as I can recall, nobody was awake but me. But I know my dad was a light sleeper, so he probably knew they were there. And they pulled me out of my bed. And they put me in the back of the Jeep, and I think there were 3 other kids. And this was at night. And I was on the West Coast in California, the Great Central Valley, where we grow the vegetables for half of the United States. Okay, so this is an agricultural area. My father was a preacher on Sundays, and he worked on a dairy during the week. And we lived in a trailer house. So I'm not describing rich people. I'm describing dirt poor farm workers. And these guys come and get me. And from Dad's perspective, I was gone a half an hour. They left me on the front doorstep with my pajamas turned inside out. But I was different. I couldn't speak English anymore. Yeah, that's how it went. Now, from my perspective, these two guys in this Jeep drove me 3,000 miles east across the entire continental United States. It's what, 5 miles to 9 kilometers? So, it's almost a 2-to-1. So I'm gonna guess it's about 5,000 kilometers. We're talking, it's a long way. And it took us almost, sorry. It took us a long way, almost a week, to get to Langley, Virginia. Virginia is on the East Coast. Langley is on the coast. Langley is an Air Force base now, and it's where the headquarters of the CIA is now. That building was being built while I was there. So I was not being kept in the CIA headquarters. I was being kept in a building on the coast, and I was being kept in the basement. And if you've ever seen the show Stranger Things, it looked like that. The open areas. Everything was white. White walls, white tile, white floors, white ceilings. All of the clothing was white. The men who worked there all wore white. The ones who were in charge wore white lab coats. And there were ETs there. We didn't interact with them most of the time, but there was a Naga female. I don't know if your people know what a Naga looks like, but
No, we don't actually.
they're a hybrid race of humans with African racial features. I don't think they're actually Africans. I think they're ETs, but they have those kinds of features. You know, when they have hair, it's really the really curly stuff. And snakes, but they're not Earth snakes. They're off-world snakes. And the planet these hybrids come from is in the Cassiopeia system. That's where they come from. And they're a hybrid species, and they speak, and they are telepathic. And this particular one was black with a white underside, and it started under her chin, the white did, and it came down. So her face was basically black. And I mean black like the frame of your photo. I don't mean black like people. And, you know, the serpent kind of black. And she had these huge, luminous blue eyes. And her tail that strung out behind the lab coat was probably 20 feet. That's what, 6 meters. Yeah, I took sciences in college, so I kind of half understand metric. We don't use it in the United States. The common people don't. So yeah, I get a idea of how to convert, but yeah. So I'm going to give approximates because I'm trying. But when I got to Langley, there were 1,000 kids in this basement. And it was basically an old hospital. That's the way it was set up. The hospitals,
When you
like in World War II, the old style.
okay, so when you got to Langley, firstly, how old were you?
I was 4, almost 5.
Oh, okay,
I
and
was little. I weighed about 40 pounds, and that's what, maybe 25 kilograms. I was little. So people in my family, we grow slow until we get into a puberty, and then we suddenly spurt up. So I was tiny. They thought I was going to be a very short person. But yeah, I was this little spitfire. You know, the kids that can't sit still and they ask the wrong questions and they're a total pain in the butt. I
yep.
was I was one of those. Some people think I still am. So, yeah, that's what showed up at Langley. And my mama was from Oklahoma, which is in the border south. So when I showed up at Langley, I had an Oklahoma accent because I learned it from mama. So it I've worked hard to get rid of that accent. Seriously, in the United States, a Southern accent, people hear it and they deduct 50 IQ points. So I have worked hard to clear myself of that. I speak like Middle America, but not the South. Yeah. Until Jimmy Carter was president, you could not accomplish anything if you had a Southern accent. Seriously.
Why
So,
is that?
because the Union won the Civil War and
Mm,
the South had a different culture,
right.
and the North, I'll just describe it in terms of your Boer War with the English. Yeah, the South
Yeah.
lost, and so they got treated badly.
Yeah. Okay.
And they have some concepts that make it difficult for them to become successful in a Northern style culture. Uh,
Right.
and it's cultural. It's not that there's anything wrong with those people or that they're stupid. It's just a cultural thing that they have to overcome if they're going to succeed in a Northern culture. And we still have that culture war going on, by the way, 100 years later.
Right. We do too, yeah. You just mentioned the
Almost,
Anglo, yeah, you mentioned the Anglo-Boer War. I gotta tell you, it still goes on. It still
yeah.
goes on.
Yeah,
Mm,
it's almost 200 years later, and we're still fighting that same war. We're just
mm.
fighting it culturally instead of with guns.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
so yeah. Um, my family, my father's family is Southern. My mother's family was actually French Canadian, and so the French Canadians were treated worse than the Southerners. So it even at home. The English in Canada have treated the French Canadians really badly. And so, yeah, I'm sitting here and I'm like, I'm a mix of all the people everybody hates.
Why the French Canadians? Why were they treated badly in Canada as a matter of interest?
Because the British didn't want the French there. They were still at war in Europe.
Right,
And the French had gotten to Canada first and called it Acadie. And there was actually a war. And the English won, and they did a whole bunch of stuff to the French Canadians. Um, what is it called? La Grande Expulsion, the Great Expulsion. Yeah,
wow,
and they got rid of probably 3/4 of the French, sent them on ships, sent them to the United States, sent them on ships. Several of the ships were lost in hurricanes, so most of the original French population was killed by the English or sent out. And there are monuments today in Quebec province about the expulsion. But The survivors kind of got an attitude, and today Quebec still speaks French, and there's a huge movement to be separatist from English Canada, and they're still fighting. And I have, even on social media, I have been blocked by people who found out I had French Canadian heritage. I mean, I was raised in California as an Okie, you know.
My word.
I've studied all this stuff, but to me it feels like I really don't have a horse in the race.
Right. Wow,
But
exactly. You kind of,
and it,
yeah, you're part of it, but you're not engaging in it, which is very
yeah,
interesting. Yeah, I feel the same way a lot of the time, I have to say.
I get
Sure.
sucked into it whether I want to be or not. Um,
Mm,
I have this firm belief that all of humanity should be equal before the law, that we should all have
absolutely.
the same, that we should all have the same rights, the same privileges, equal opportunities, and a level playing field. And I know for a fact
Totally.
that this is not reality, but it's still what I would like to have. Reality is those in charge determine who gets to proceed.
Hmm.
And
Well, let's
it's
see,
it's been interesting tracking that. Now, when I got to
absolutely.
Langley, I spoke Okie English. I was almost 5 years old. I was one of 1,000 children ranging from 4 to 7 in age, boys and girls mixed. Um, we were kept in this basement. We were rarely brought up to the surface. So this was our world. And they shaved my head, and they put me in white cotton pajamas, which in those days were drawstring pants and a top that was open in the back and had a tie at the top. And they were a cotton flannel that had been washed so many times that it was like rough. But I had one sheet on my mattress, and I had a pillow with a pillowcase, and I had one blanket, and everything was white. White, 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 white. You saw no color. And I had a little room. Everybody had their own private cell. And it was the length of a child's bed. It wasn't even the 6 foot of adult beds. It was a child's bed, which I think is 4.5 feet. And so the bed was across the back of the room, and across from it was a child-sized toilet, a child-sized sink, no mirrors, and a door. And in the door there was a window about this big where they could look in to monitor you. Because if we that painting in your background, if we ever started looking like that, they held us out and put us in the incinerator. I was at Langley for 5 years with a 6-month side trip to Montauk. When I can't hear you. Unmute.
Sorry. Sorry, I sometimes forget because the wind is blowing so badly and my wind chime is going off in the background. So,
Uh,
when you were saying you were at Langley for 5 years, um, I want to just go back to what you were saying earlier on. They took you for, on our dimension, seemed like what, 30 minutes was 30 minutes.
it wasn't
But,
our dimension. It was, people think I was pulled out of time, and I wasn't. People think I was pulled out of this dimension, and I wasn't. This is still real time, real, our timeline. It's just I was two places at once.
right, I'm with you on that. So it
And
was like
and
a,
went like a loop. And when I got through to the end in 2014, that was when I was time traveled back to 1959.
right,
There's a
right,
there's a technology that the Germans use. It's called a regeneration tank. And it has a thing like a tablet on the outside of it with a slot. And you put 1 drop of blood into the slot, and it uses that to change your body. If you get hurt, it will regenerate your whole body, but the tech who runs it has to put in an age and a weight. So they can set you for any age or weight that they want. So they had my specs from when I first got to Langley, and they put me back to that. But it doesn't change your brain. I mean, it obviously it was smaller, but it doesn't change the fact that I had been mind fractured at Langley. So when I came home to my dad, I had alters. And we're going to talk about how my alters were made. Okay? When I got to Langley, they shaved my head, they put me in these cotton pajamas. I had this cell that I lived in. Sometimes they would feed me, sometimes they wouldn't. Sometimes they would bring me out into the mess hall area and let me eat with other kids, but I was not allowed to interact with them. If I did, I'd be put back in my cell or worse. So it was literally a prison for children. And on top of that, they were doing things to us. Things that Jesse Sabatar would have found familiar. Okay. They started us with drowning. The old whirlpool bath from the hospital, they used that to drown us because we were little. They could just dump our heads in. I mean, these were grown men doing this to us. And like I said, I was no more than 25 kilograms. I was little. And that was the goal, was to get us where we would breathe liquids. Because the regeneration tanks that the Germans had provided have a gel in them. It's made from black goo that's had the sentience removed. So it's basically a nanobot gel. And they put you in that, and then they set it for repair, and they can bring you back from the dead for up to 4 months. Now, this is important information because it means that the people at Langley don't care if they kill you or not, because they can pop you into the regen tank and bring you back.
does it matter how, if your body's damaged or not? I mean, can they repair a
They
damaged body?
repair. They can repair a damaged body. They cannot repair a damaged mind.
Right, exactly.
So
Oh,
that's
that's
why they
wild.
watched for the reaction like in your painting there, is because they can't fix that.
Yeah.
So we started off with 1,000 kids. By the time I graduated, and they considered this a class, by the way, a school. This is what they consider it, a school to train people. When I graduated in 1964, there were between 20 and 30 of us, and I'm sorry, I can't remember exactly how many. That's all out of those 1,000. So we had a 2% survival rate.
So when you say that you were the only survivors there, of those kids that I'm assuming were all, if you were around about four, I would imagine some of them must have been the same age, perhaps a little bit older. Um, are we saying that they were killed?
Yes.
Now I'm
When
interested.
when they
Hmm?
became catatonic, they would be put in the incinerator. And they didn't bother to kill them first. They just burned them.
That's just horrific. Now, I mean,
Now,
but
I can describe the techniques used, but I have tracked the techniques back to the Mothers of Darkness. These
I would
are
love to hear about that.
these are horrible, horrible things that have been done by satanic groups, and they were taught to the various people. Now, I worked backwards. The people at Langley who were running the show were paperclip scientists. That means they were German Nazis. The Germans learned these techniques from the Tavistock Institute in England. And the Tavistock Institute in England shares members with the Mothers of Darkness. And that's where the techniques came from, at least in the 20th century.
Explain the techniques that you're talking about,
Okay,
and how did you track them back to the Mothers of Darkness? Talk to us about that, because I think on this channel we're quite familiar with the Mothers of Darkness and their position within the system, because Jessie the Botar was trained to be the
mm,
Queen Mother of Darkness, and of course then they have the four mothers around
mhm.
her as well. So I would be
Yeah,
very interested how you figured that and backtrack that, because it makes a lot of sense to me actually.
actually there are documents tracking the paperclip scientists to Nazi programs, and the Nazis were very meticulous about tracking all of their information. They were OCD about giving sources and keeping records. So it was very easy to track the German program to Tavistock. Now, from Tavistock to Mothers of Darkness. We mentioned in the first one that I have a bloodline descent and that I have cousins who are involved in the family. And when I got to Tavistock, I contacted 3 of them. And I said, okay, where did Tavistock get this? And all 3 of them simply blurted out Mothers of Darkness. There was no equivocation. There was no time to think. There was no ifs, ands, or buts. It was, this is what it was. So then I went looking for the paper trail because I knew there had to be one. And I found a video on BitChute and I can give you the link to that you can share it on the when you upload this. But I gave a presentation in July about altars. I called it Altars 101, but it was what they are, how they're made, where the tech came from. And so this search is fresh in my memory because I did it last May. You know, this hasn't been that long ago. But yeah, Jesse's work was part of what I referenced because of the overlap between the techniques. I had finally tracked down her affidavits that she had put in court, and the descriptions of what they did match what we had to do at Langley. Okay, the first thing they did was drowning. And then you would wake up in the regen tank. They would pull it. When they realized you were awake, they would pull you out, hose you down. The drain would separate the water from the nano gel, and they'd put the nano gel back in the tank because that's really expensive stuff. And they'd put you back in pajamas and put you back in your room. The next thing they would do is they had a checklist on a clipboard, and it was various sexual assaults. And remember, I was 4, and these were grown men. And there would be anything from 1 to 5 sexual assaults a day, every day. Mixed with no food. You could get water from the sink. The lights would be on or off. You had no idea if it was daytime or nighttime. Total disorientation. The goal was to create what Stuart Swerdlow describes as a 13 by 13 by 13 cubic hierarchical array of altars. Yeah, he has a book, 13 Cubed, and I recommend you read it. It goes into how they're made, and he does case studies of people that have been through the process and how he helped them resolve. Reintegrating altars is, frankly, it's a bitch. The first stage is real easy. You go into like a trance, or under hypnosis, you call the altar forward and they sit in your mind, and you start sharing memories, you start sharing personalities, and it takes a good 3 to 6 months, and you eventually blend because of the ongoing shared memories. You eventually become one. And keep in mind, your altars are what you would have been with those same memories. Your memories are what makes you who you are. So altars are formed by a trauma so bad that the child has to decide if they're going to live or die. It's not always a conscious decision, but the psyche has to decide if they're going to live or die. If they're going to live, they form a bubble around the trauma memory. And they no longer share memory. They no longer access that part because the memory that formed it is so traumatic that that's how the main part of the psyche survives. This is a normal human response to trauma. We have been doing this for thousands and thousands, if not millions of years. If a child witnessed their parents killed, they went into dissociation, created a bubble around that memory, and whatever humans found them and decided to raise them were now their family because they no longer remembered. This is the easiest way to look at it is this is a psychic scarring. So at this point, there are no demons involved. Okay.
I think I would just like to say something here, which is very interesting. I also think it's actually so beautiful how your mind protects you.
Yeah.
I mean, you talk about the bubble that's formed around that memory that is just too painful for the child's little mind to endure. And it's
Mm-hmm.
almost like a blessing that your mind protects you from that. Because imagine if every child had to walk around with all those memories being, I mean, I remember as a child, I mean, I remember once my dad whipping my ass. And it's something I will always remember, not because it was so terrible. I mean, let me tell you, he wouldn't have whipped my ass unless I thoroughly deserved it. Rest assured about that. But it was such a shock because I didn't expect it.
Mm.
I mean, I could push him, you know what I'm saying? And one particular,
Mm.
and that's what I'm saying. So it created that shock in my mind. And it's something I will always remember, but it's something like, whoa, that wasn't very nice, right? So it's
Yeah.
like I have a lot of those kind of memories as a kid. It's normal to have memories when kids at school bullied you, or,
Mm-hmm.
you had a cat fight with a girl in the bathroom or whatever. Those are the kind of things that are normal for kids, you to remember the good and the
Yeah.
bad, and to deal with that because I think that's what life's about. There's not any good and there's not any bad. That enables us to bring in that beautiful balance. But you guys have experienced such extreme forced trauma. They
Mm-hmm.
have pushed you
Well,
to the extreme where you cannot be pushed anymore. So, as you say, you either dissociate or you die.
yeah. I would bet that there are thousands of people in Rwanda who have altars because of the events that happened there.
Right.
That's the kind
Makes a
of
lot of sense.
that's the kind of events that cause altars. We're not talking about your dad beat you. We're talking about things that were so bad that that your child self had to choose to live or die.
That's what I'm saying. And for
Yeah.
for a normal child growing up in a normal family where you've got loving, protective parents, you
Yeah.
experience both, of that. But
Yeah.
you guys have had it so extreme that it is so unnatural for a little kid's mind to have to go and be subjected to the trauma and the torture that, yeah, absolutely. It's the only way, That's why I say the only thing your mind can do is to put it in a bubble of love, bubble of protection, and
Hmm.
say, okay, I'll take care of this for you until we're ready to go. Yeah.
Now, the part of the mind that's in that bubble eventually forgets that it's a part. It thinks it's the only one. And at that point, these people will start programming that bubble into a personality. And because it
Oh,
doesn't
yeah.
and because it doesn't share memory with the main personality, the main person can pass a polygraph. So that gives them complete deniability. That's the purpose for it. A lot of the things that they trained us to do are illegal, immoral, and just plain evil. And so you have this bubble that doesn't know right from wrong, and it's being trained to do these things. But it's still you. It's still
Totally.
it's still who you would have been with just those memories. So when you reintegrate these people, which I've been working on, I've reintegrated 45 of them now. When you reintegrate these personalities, and they think they're full people, okay?
Yeah, totally.
You have to learn to live with whatever they have done.
Then, yes, absolutely.
And that's the hardest part because I have alters who have killed people. I have alters who have destroyed entire worlds. And now that we're reintegrated, I have to live with those memories, things that I would have never done. Not me. Yeah. I have to listen to the telepathic death screams of entire worlds because I have an altar that I have an altar that would telepathically guide missiles through EM shields, electromagnetic shields, that would take out the controls of the missile as you went through the shields. And so we would lose targeting. So I had to telepathically guide the thing to the goal because I was the only one on the ship that had that capability. So because I was there telepathically, I heard everybody's death screams. And so now Penny, who was straight arrow church mouse until my memories were activated, I get to hear that in my head over and over and over. And I wake up in the middle of the night screaming, blood curdling screams. And I live in an apartment house. I wake the neighbors regularly. And I just tell them I'm sorry. It was a flashback. And we've never really talked about what I'm flashing back to, but they know I'm the right age for the Vietnam War because Lou, my partner, was in Vietnam. So when we were first together, God, 24 years ago, he used to have nightmares where he would wake people up with his screaming, and he's gotten a lot better. I haven't noticed him waking me up for probably the last decade. So he's doing better, and I'm really glad.
It's amazing.
But like you were saying before, there are some things people never really get over. And my understanding after doing the math, 13 by 13 by 13 ends up just shy of 2200. I think it's 197 or 2197, something like that. So it's just shy of 2,200 altars. That's what my total is. And I've reintegrated 45. I do not anticipate finishing the task before my death, but it's something
Right.
I will continue to work on because I'm working towards wholeness. But I have been warned by psychics that some of my altars I really don't want to deal with. But at the same time, there's one in particular that has a Thelema seal on it. Now, I know there were occultists at Langley, and they are the ones who put the demons into the altars. So most altars do not have demons. They are not demons. The ones that the occultists create are the ones who do. And Jesse could tell you better about how that's done. Um, that one
Wow.
has a seal on it, and it wants to be reintegrated, but I think it wants to be boss. And the last couple of months, it's been doing what we call a blood flood, where it will just fill my visual with blood. So everywhere I look, that's all I can see. And that was why I was getting to where I just didn't want to talk to anybody. I didn't want to do anything. I didn't want to be on shows because all I could see was blood, and it was interfering in my life. And I finally gotten that one to calm down.
Well, that's
So,
wonderful. Well, usually
uh,
they just want to be acknowledged anyway,
well, I was
healing.
acknowledging that she's there.
Hmm.
She's there, she's trapped, she wants out of that life. She wants to leave the body she has been inserted in and come home. But
Would you, are
I'm
your
not sure I can,
altars,
I'm not sure I can live with what she's done.
when you talk about the body she's been inserted into, would that be like an avatar or someone that she's taken possession of?
Okay, a lot of the people in disclosure talk about clones like they have no souls. And that's a lie. Souls are souls come with the territory. Okay.
Makes sense, yes.
Your clone is de facto your identical twin. And when there's technology that inserts a consciousness into that identical twin, and you are possessing your sibling, and it feels different. Okay. When you are in your body, you are you all the way to the tips of your fingers, the tips of your toes. It's all you, and you know it's you. When you're in a clone, you're riding someone else, and they resist. And the longer you're there, the more they resist. And that's why the American programs do 20 and back, is because you are possessing your identical twin, and after 25 years, your clone will push you out. So they stop it short of that. Your contract's for 20 years, so your clone can't push you out. And how do they send you home? They kill the clone.
Oh my gosh.
The crimes involved in these programs are so massive that it's like trying to explain this to someone that has no background. It's like, where do I start? How deep can I go before they're so horrified that their eyes glaze over and they're not hearing it? So it's I can go a little deeper with your people because they're used to hearing Jesse. But most hosts, by now they've already fritzed out on me and they haven't heard a word since the first 5 minutes. And that's the honest truth. Thank you. Thank you so much because this is so hard to talk about for regular people to get the depths of the horror.
Of what goes on.
They literally modified my DNA before I was born. I had no choice in this. None. My father agreed to this to keep his own ass out of prison because he was a coward. And he had no idea what they were actually going to do to me. All he knew was that they needed my service. Well,
When
they
you say, when you talk about modifying your DNA before you were even born, can you maybe expand on that a little bit?
um okay. I have a background in chemistry, physics, and microbiology. I understand how they did it. I just have trouble explaining it to people without that background. Okay, for your audience who will understand it, it was an early form of CRISPR tech.
Right?
CRISPR tech came from ETs. We did not
Right.
develop. So what they did was they used a chemical to clip specific places in my DNA strands, two of them. I have two small chunks of alpha draconian DNA that were inserted in specific places. It's not enough to make me a hybrid. So I'm still very human, like everybody else. Okay? But it was enough to give me certain abilities that other people don't have. And because I have those abilities, a lot of fearful religious people have accused me of all kinds of things that are not true. Okay, I consider myself a legitimate victim of this program. I'm a human being that has been used as slave labor my entire life.
Absolutely.
That's how I see it. Now, at this point, I have enough memories back that I'm screaming from the rooftops, this shit has to stop.
Exactly.
I don't want this to happen to any other children. Period.
Exactly.
Now, why was
Exactly.
I targeted? I was targeted because both of my parents were descendants of Jesus. And for all of
Right.
you religious fanatics out there, yes, Jesus was married to Mary Magdalene and they did have children.
It's such an interesting debate that, the
The
whole Mary
wedding,
Jesus strand.
the
Yeah.
wedding at Cana in the Bible was Jesus marrying Mary Magdalene.
Right.
Period. And people who don't get that, I'm sorry, you're just not seeing it. And
Right.
yes, all of Europe knew that Jesus had kids. All of Europe knew that his daughter married into the Frankish warlords, and that's why the Merovingians were his descendants.
Right.
And then the Catholic Church tried to wipe them out, and they did get rid of the males, but the females survived. So all the Merovingian descendants are from their daughters.
Right.
One of whom married Charlemagne.
Right. Wow.
Well, Charlemagne had 12 wives, but only one of them was a Merovingian. So being descended from Charlemagne doesn't necessarily mean anything. You have to be descended from the right wife.
Yes. Very
So,
interesting.
but all of
Very
the
interesting. Wow.
all of the major royal houses in Europe at the time of the Crusades, so we're talking 1,000 years ago, all of them were either descendants of Jesus, descendants of the Etruscans who were there before Rome, or descendants of the Egyptian nobility. All of them. And they started marrying each other and blending those lines. So what we have now is the family, and they are no more apart than fourth cousins. They are so inbred. It's unreal. But
Yeah. Yeah.
they're doing that to preserve the psychic abilities that came from the ancient ET hybridization.
Wow. Makes
Now,
perfect sense what you're saying. Really does.
but that's why the agencies were looking for us, is because we already had psychic abilities that they could enhance.
Right.
And that's one of the things why the Mothers of Darkness, among others, do these horrible things to kids, is to activate their psychic abilities.
Yes.
There's this there's this man, he's a physicist. He's got a great heart. He's got a lot of passion, and he really doesn't want to listen to anybody else. But he proved that you could activate telepathy in normal people through a frequency that he labeled bliss. Unfortunately, the occult groups use torture. They torture children to activate their psychic abilities. They torture their own children to activate their psychic abilities. This is how they have done it for thousands and thousands of years. So the once sexual assault stopped working on me, they before my memories were activated, I kept having this recurring dream of this woman opening a cabinet and this little blonde girl going into the cabinet and traveling through the wall and coming out another cabinet. The real memory that came up when my memories were activated was that there was a hole in the wall and that they'd shove me in it and nail a piece of plywood over me and leave me to suffocate. That was what they did when the sexual assault stopped working. Another memory was being locked into what had been a bank vault with other children and we were left until the air ran out. And another memory was being put into a room with other children, and only one of us could come out. We were required to kill each other.
Yeah.
Keep in mind, we had a regen tank where it could bring you back from the dead. You could kill your best friend, and 2 days later, they'd be back. Also, if you refused to kill your best friend, they'd kill you, they'd put you into regen, they'd bring you back and order you to do it again. Rinse and repeat until you complied. You learned that death was not an escape. Death was not an option. You obeyed because you really had no other choice. Now, imagine if the Mothers of Darkness had a regen tank. To my knowledge, they don't. Imagine all the horrors that could be accomplished if you could bring the victims back from the dead and do it over and over and over and over. And that was what they
Wow.
did. That was what they did to me at Langley. There were even episodes where my cerebrospinal fluid was drained off me to harvest the adrenochrome out of it. And I was dumped
I
back
believe
into the
that.
pit. So I have seen the kids that went catatonic. Their adrenochrome was harvested before they were incinerated. Adrenochrome is the most expensive substance both on and off world.
So when you say these kids would go catatonic, obviously that would be because we know in order for them to harvest their adreno, it's got to be huge levels of fear and pain and torture that these kids are subjected to. So you say they just they incinerated if they when they go catatonic. Do they come back? Is that when they come back a couple
No,
of days later?
you can't come back from incineration because they didn't keep any tissue to bring you back.
Oh, that is so absolutely horrific. I
That's why
mean,
there were
that
only 20 something of us went in 64s because they burned the rest.
I
This
mean,
these are horrible, horrible, horrible people doing horrible, horrible crimes. And that's why they don't want me talking, is because I'm a survivor of this.
I
Now,
think
I think it
mm,
was about 5 years ago, I was contacted by a DoD agent who claimed she was NSA, but her email was Department of Defense in Washington, D.C. So she would have been working out of the Pentagon no matter what department she actually worked for. And she tried to get me to do something telepathically as a mission. And it was supposed to be a mission of mercy because there was some rogue agent that they wanted me to bring in. Not kill, mind you, just bring in. And when I made contact, the agent was supposed to kill me. And I'm still here. I'll just put it that way. I'm still here. And this particular agent was telling me that I was the last survivor of the class of 1964. That's what she
wow.
called it. The class of 1964 at Langley. I was the last survivor. And That enrages me. I don't know if your audience can feel that or not, but that just completely, totally fucking enrages me that I am the last of 1,000 kids that they tortured for 5 years.
That is actually quite a horrifying thought. There are no words. There are no words that can actually describe that.
Yeah,
But I will say, you are here for a reason and a purpose. There's a reason that you are the sole survivor of your class. And I think there's a reason why you need to speak, because your voice too is their voice right now.
it is.
So,
And I
yeah,
don't want this to happen to anyone else. Anyone.
exactly,
Not boys, not
exactly.
girls, not bloodline, not
Animals.
normies. This should not even happen to animals.
Never, especially not animals. They're pure and innocent, like children, you know.
Children are pure and innocent. Even the ones with even the ones that are rebellious. They're doing it because this is their nature, and that's pure and
Mm,
innocent.
absolutely.
Obedience is not necessarily pure and innocent.
No,
Obe-
not at all.
in my book, obedience means you've been traumatized.
Exactly. Children are free. They had to feel safe and protected and enjoy life. And I most certainly hold that in my prayer for every child that there is. That's why we do what we do.
It
But
is.
Penny, I want to say thank you for joining us again. We will be taking this further as well. Um, I know that it's uncomfortable to say the very least, to share these stories, and I just want to say thank you. And we appreciate you very much for speaking up and speaking out. You give great explanations as to how things work, um, you know, explaining how the system actually is set up in that way. So thank you for that. I really, really, really appreciate that. And well, we've only just scratched the second grain of the tip of the iceberg. I've no doubt there's a heck of a lot more to come. So I want to say thank you. But before we wrap up, then, is there anything just from your side? We will have all your links and things again in the description below, but perhaps you can tell us where people can find you and if there's anything you want to wrap up with.
Um, Children are the most precious thing that we have. They are our future. And without them, there's really no purpose to most of what we do. Humanity is worth saving. And right now, the people in charge are fighting over who's going to be the boss. And one group wants to save us, and another group wants to completely destroy us. Please choose wisely who you're going to follow.
So true.
My current work, my podcast is on Odyssey under Nachtwaffen Pilot. I have a Substack and a Patreon. Both are now accepting donations, but I consider donations to be completely voluntary. I don't even set a price. It's just whatever you want to give. If you want to give, I'd say 99% of my work is freely available on the internet. I have a huge body of work. I've been public for 9 years. Usually the interviews go as far as the host is able to hear me. So, yeah. So some have more depth than others, depending on if I look in their eyes and the host is still listening. So, yeah.
Well, we go deep here, just so that you know.
Yes. Yes, I've noticed. I appreciate that. But I wanted so badly for, okay, in 2016, I was shot 3 times with dew, trying to shut me up before I started. And they got my partner in 2 of them. And that's just not cool. I love that man. He rescued me when I was being poisoned by my ex. And he didn't have to take me in, he didn't have to save my life, and he didn't have to keep me around afterwards. And he's taken care of me when I was as helpless as an infant. And I love him. And the CIA made a really big mistake shooting him. I'll just put it that way, because that just completely infuriated me. My mama
Wow.
bear came out.
No, I'm sure, my gosh. Wow.
So,
Well,
yeah,
I'm happy you're okay. I'm happy he's okay. And that none of the attempts have been successful. So
none of the attempts have been successful so far. Knock on wood.
stay safe there, you beautiful people. Penny, stay safe. Well, guys and girls, thank you again so much for joining us this morning, this evening, this afternoon, wherever in the beautiful world you are. It's late at night here for me already, so not time
It's
for
not
me.
it's not quite noon here.
No, we are heading for 8 o'clock at night now. Thank you, guys. God bless you all. And thank you so much again, Penny. And guys, for everyone, check out Penny's links in the description area. Follow her on her Substack, on her channel. Donations optional, obviously, but I want to just encourage our community to support our survivors, because this is how our survivors survive. We all need money, is when we buy their books or uh, recordings, whatever it might be, products, and it's how we support them and listen to their stories, because each one has their own unique story. Each one is different. Each one has gone through this hell. And so many millions whose voices have not been heard, and that we are listening to that now through the voices of people like Penny, like Jesse, like all the other survivors who speak up and speak out. So thank you again, Penny. Appreciate you. Okay, guys and girls, I will see you very, very soon. God bless you all. And yeah, have a beautiful day. Cherry byes.